After 13 months of partisan political maneuvering, the government of Premier Rob Lance delivered its speech from the throne with hopes of generating a much-needed political reset. Did the Tory government succeed? It sure didn't sound like a reset. It sounded a lot like King-era promises being recycled yet again. There's a lot to talk about here: healthcare, energy, fiscal capacity. I'm Paul MacNeill, publisher of Island Press Limited, and I'm joined by former Provincial PC Cabinet Minister Stephen Myers as we co-host Myers and MacNeill, our weekly take on politics and what makes PEI tick. Edition 1, let's get at it. Stephen Myers, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. I think we're going to do some good work over the coming weeks, or we'll at least have some fun doing it.
Yeah.
What stood out for you in the speech from the throne?
Probably what stood out for me in the speech from the throne is there's not that many new things in it, though I will give credit where credit is due. Like, it's great to see the initiative for young farmers, and I think that spells out the impact that Boyce Thompson has on his file. I think that's important. The fertility one, I think I really like. I think it's high time that government put more money into that. And to be honest with you, Susie Dillon is probably the lead in charge behind that. She's been pushing really hard on that since her time being elected. So give her credit on that front. Otherwise, I would say I found it rather bland and boring. I think that it's hard to brand yourself as a new government at the very start of the speech and then re-announce all of the Dennis King initiatives that have been happening for the past 7 years.
Especially when you take an extra month.
Yeah, well, the month is the month. I'm not as concerned about the prerogative of the House probably as others are, but I do think this was an opportunity for Rob to kind of put a stamp on government and make it new, and he probably didn't do that.
Yeah, the big issues that we face in this province: healthcare, affordability, fiscal capacity. We really didn't hear a whole lot. I mean, how many times can a PC government announce medical homes and there'll be staffing before somebody realizes that the rollout of medical homes has not gone according to hopes and plans? Matter of fact, it's fairly big miss because they can't staff the darn things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the medical homes took a long time for everybody to understand, including myself, even though I had to sell them on the doorsteps in 2023. But I feel like where they are, they're working well. And I think the big one that they have at UPEI is going to be huge to take some people off the list whenever that gets up and running. But I don't disagree with you. Like, you can't keep, announcing the same initiative over and over again and act like it's new.
Were you surprised by anything on the energy file?
Probably a little bit surprised that it's not as robust as I thought it was going to be. I know when the leadership's going on, Rob had talked about bringing in a performance-based system for maritime electric, which is something that I think probably has its merits.
Well, he promised to make it his first piece of legislation.
He did.
And it doesn't look like it's going to be the first piece of legislation. The Tory whip was saying that it's going to be complicated.
It's not complicated at all. Other jurisdictions do it. Hawaii does it. Iowa does it. Like, it's not an abnormal system for electricity, but it's not complicated at all. That actually frustrates me to hear something like that.
Do you think there was some chatter in the speech about regional cooperation as it pertains to healthcare, energy, that type of thing? Do you get a sense that like an independent energy system operator is something that could even be considered in PEI if we could partner with Nova Scotia? Is that something that this government could get their heads around and champion?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't think that we were ever the issue when it came to regional cooperation. So I think the issue is and will always be, how do New Brunswick and Nova Scotia get along, and will they work together? And I think if you go back to the Atlantic Loop fell apart because it didn't benefit all of the provinces. It really benefited Nova Scotia, and nobody else had any benefit from it, so nobody wanted to put any skin into it either. So it ended up falling apart because nobody wanted to pay for it.
I'm going to make a bit of a veer here. I mean, get the sense that this government isn't particularly good at comms and positioning. Putting Brad Trivers as Speaker. Brad's a lovely guy, but Brad was also the chair of the Legislative Committee, who last year tried to make up his own rules, which don't exist, in an attempt to avoid disclosure of the NHL contract. And in the process, he was dismissive of a female employee of the legislature who rightly indicated to the chair, Brad Trivers, that what he was suggesting was not part of the legislative rulebook. And I'm wondering optically, what does it say to the public when someone like Brad Trivers becomes Speaker of the House, which is a cushy job because he was a close supporter of Rob Lance. But Jen Redmond was dropped from cabinet. So the female contingent within cabinet went from 4 to 3.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think in my case, I really like Brad. Brad's a good friend of mine, and I mean, to know him off camera and behind the scenes, he's like a super, super guy, and he's got a very big heart, and he's quite kind. I think the thing that probably
And
bothered
a marginal Elvis impersonator.
marginal at best, Elvis impersonator, yes, but I I think the thing that kind of bothered me about it, and as a purist of the Legislative Assembly, I wasn't really that keen on the Premier announcing that that's who he wanted to be Speaker. I mean, there's 27 members of the Assembly, and the whole purpose of the Legislative Assembly is that everybody's equal in there, regardless of what title they hold. So there's 27 seats. Everybody has a vote who the Speaker is. The Assembly should decide for themselves who represents them. And I feel like, and this is not new. I mean, if you go back to Robert Giz announcing that Carolyn Bertram was going to be his Speaker, that was something that ruffled the feathers of Charlie McKay at the time, who was the clerk. And he kind of, I recall behind the scenes him saying things to Robert Giz about that's not your job. Your job is you have a single vote. You're not supposed to be impacted, because the only way that it can be fair and impartial is if the 27 people select organically who they want. And that's not a knock on Brad, in my opinion. I like Brad.
No, I mean, Rob put it in a press release. I think it was part of the cabinet shuffle press release, but
it's an overreach. I think
you may be idealizing the ability of the provincial legislature to be independent on electing a speaker.
Which is fair.
I don't remember any opposition member ever pulling an upset.
No, Hal Perry was close. I think he was close. Yeah, I think there was a vote or two between him and Colin Levy. It was close, but I mean, it was a minority government as well, so there was other factors at play there. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with you.
So going forward, I mean, we're going to have some big issues here. You know, as a province, Stephen, our deficit will probably be $500 million. Our debt is $3.7 billion or something now. The speech from the throne certainly signaled that the Lance government isn't going to follow, say, the Houston government in terms of cuts. Specifically, they said they're not going to cut culture, which I actually think is a good strategy to have, because culture is traditionally underfunded and over-delivers in terms of economic benefit. But if you don't have a plan, then the bond rating agencies will tell you what your plan is. We're already spending $170 million minimum on debt service charges. They're going through the roof. And this government is talking about, we're making investments for the future generations. But if you're not protecting the bottom line, you're hurting future generations. Do you think they found the happy spot, or is it striking a miss?
Well, I don't know if there is a happy spot. I think that's the issue when it comes to budget management. I mean, the Tim Houston case is a great case where he made deeper cuts, kind of maybe had to backtrack on it because he was paying the price for it. And then you take the New Brunswick case where it's the biggest deficit in history of New Brunswick, and people are upset. So is there a chance that you can do something that won't make people upset? I'm not sure, but I would tend to agree with the Premier's or the speech from the throne's assertion that now is not the time to cut. I think that now is the time to continue to invest, because people are hurting, and if you take stuff away from them politically, you will pay the price.
Yes, that's the problem with politics, right? I mean, 18-month election cycle, and it's punting issues down the road, and the debt and deficit is. I mean, I would have loved to have been in the Auditor General's office today to see Mr. Noonan and his reaction to basically what it came across as, don't worry, we'll get around to it, but we're not going to do it now.
He does like 7 or 8 reports a year now. I mean, you can't keep up to the number of reports. It used to be that the Auditor General report was a big day because you got one a year, and it was a deep dive. We get so many of them now. I don't remember the last time I read one, Paul. And I think I had one written about my department I didn't bother to read because I thought, well, nobody else reads them. Why would I? That's fair. Do you read them?
Yes, I do.
You're really one of the few people.
I hope you returned your salary that week.
I don't worry. I work super hard that week anyways.
It is an interesting point. The Auditor General's, and this is a bit of a veer, is the Auditor General, do they do a greater service to Islanders by providing 1 or 2 major reports that would generate the news cycle that we need to sort of build credibility into the Auditor General's office?
I don't even know it's credibility so much as there's so much information and negativity out there today that you take the Pierre Poilievre as the example. You hear so much negativity from him that you stop listening to it. And I think that anybody who gets too deep into any, and I'll just give you my own example. When I was in opposition, I used to take long breaks. Like we would go at something really hard and then I'd disappear for 6 weeks to try to soften the fact that I'm not in your face every single day. I don't want to be in Paul MacNeill's column every Wednesday. I don't want people to stop listening to me because they hear too much of me. So there's a risk when you're in the public space, no matter who you are and whether you're doing the work of Jesus or not is irrelevant. It's that sometimes you can be there too much and people stop listening to you. It's a very fine line.
It is a fine line, but maybe one of the challenges, and I hadn't thought of this, to be honest with you, so it's an interesting point. Maybe one of the challenges is the issues being raised don't resonate with ordinary islanders.
Right.
There are a lot of islanders who are going around trying to figure out whether they're going to pay the rent or mortgage or buy food or have decent, healthy food for the kids. Those are big life challenges. And I don't get the sense, by the way, in the speech from the throne that we're seeing any real movement to make it a little more comfortable just to get by in this province.
Yeah, I guess the problem is they're cash strapped. So, I mean, what initiatives can you bring forward that are going to make life better for everyday islanders? Going to be tax cuts or reduce the gas tax or reduce tax on food or reduce taxes on things that people use all the time? And government just can't afford to do it, I don't think.
Well, maybe that's because some of the priorities that they select, correct? We haven't canceled the NHL deal, and that's $8 million accounting with zero data to support it, other than the tourism PEI saying, it's generated conferences. I know the president, the CEO of the NHL flew into a party at a private residence and flew out the same day. I don't know what that generated, maybe a few fees at the airport. But that would be an example of a political expenditure that has never been justified, other than the former Minister of Tourism once said, he spoke about a group of 15 mythical golfers from Houston who were watching the Four Nations Cup and saw the ad and said, hey, let's go to PEI. What he didn't say is PEI had to spend $7 million plus with the NHL just to be allowed to give them $500,000 more for spending at the Four Nations Cup. So the point of all of this is political priorities trump real priorities in a lot of cases.
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And I definitely not going to defend the NHL deal. I think that government has to spend money on loss leading things to develop whatever it is they're trying to develop. So if it's tourism, it's tourism. And I'll use Quebec as the example because I've been in their New York office. The government of Quebec has a New York office. They have one in Paris. They have one in Moncton. They have one in Vancouver. And it's specifically designed for their businesses who want to do business in those jurisdictions. So if you're a Quebec-based company and you want to do business in Paris, you go to the government, they connect you with their Paris office, and they connect. Same in New York. And obviously, they spend a lot of money to staff those offices. To have the office that they have in New York is in Manhattan. Like that rent wouldn't be cheap either. But what are they getting out of it, and what are they able to show from the execution of the product that they're putting on there is, I think, probably the questions here.
I get that. And I understand the idea of actually being out in front and center. And we consider hockey boards better than conventions and meetings PEI. If we gave them half of the $8 million, they would generate a far greater benefit to island tourism than this, frankly, silly expenditure, which no cabinet minister seems willing to take on, which sort of tells me that tourism PEI is allowed to do just about whatever it wants. And I don't think that's in the best interest of taxpayers.
Well, I would question, I guess, this, and I'm not a marketing expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I always wonder, like, do people actually come because of these campaigns? Is this the stage that we're still at? Because I do a little bit of travel and nothing too major, but pick jurisdictions that I want to travel to with my family based on my own research. Like you don't get advertisements to some of the places that I've been and we've still been able to pick them to go to. So I wonder, is this how people today decide how they're going to travel places? Or is it more generic? Like, do people see things on, videos or TikToks that they wonder where those places are and they go?
That's part of it. I don't think the Department of the Tourism PEI has released specific data because they were targeting specific markets. And then last year, nobody needed to market anything in Canada because Canadians were staying in Canada, right? I just think that if you're Rob, let's turn it back to Rob Lance. He's following a popular premier who got out probably at the perfect time before he actually had to deal with really heavy decisions that would negatively impact people. He doesn't translate well when he's in front of a crowd or on TV, I think is one of the things that hurts him. He's barely won the Tory leadership, which is a real signal when basically 50% of the party says no. Has he done enough? And what does he need to do?
Well, I don't know. I think there's some work to be done inside the party. I'm not going to lie about that. I think that the results of the leadership probably were more damning than they were helpful to him. But that said, he is the premier today. And I think, the question is, are people mad enough to not vote for the Tories again? And I'm not sure that they are or not. I'm not sure that they're not either. And when they're mad enough, what's their choice? And I think when you look across the table and you got 3 middle-aged white males that are boring, all 3 of them, you're just going to pick the boring one that you know. And I think that's probably to Rob's advantage. So I use boring loosely. Like Rob is obviously a friend of mine. I think the world of him, but I don't think that any of the 3 of them are like bombastic like Robert Giz or storyteller like Dennis King. Like they're just straight plain politicians.
Do you think that's the Tory strategy down deep?
It'd be mine.
Is the Green vote seems to be collapsing. If you look at District 2, Robert Mitchell has gotten a bump. He's got a lot of political baggage.
Yeah, fair.
That no one's really hit him on.
No, but here's the thing. So there's 2 things. One is that the Green vote cratering doesn't help the Tories at all. It hurts them because that's a signal that Liberals are going back home. So if the Green vote continues to crater, it's going to make it tougher for the Tories to win. I think that they'll still win the next election, but it's going to be super tight and maybe a minority situation. And the other is like Robert Mitchell himself, and I'm certainly not giving him any advice, but I'll give him free advice right now. Stop talking.
That may be the most political.
Well, stop talking and stay out of sight. Like I think that when you look at some of the stuff that, and you can feel free to go look yourself, the stuff that Robert Mitchell puts up that is political on his Facebook, he gets 40 likes and 5 comments. When he puts up pictures of him and his wife or him and his grandchildren, he gets hundreds and hundreds. And I think that he should be careful he doesn't ratio himself because he doesn't want to get in the trap of, I like him, but he's too negative, or I like him, and why is he saying this stuff? He doesn't have to say any of this stuff. Like, that's not how governments change. Governments change because the electorate gets sick of government. It doesn't look over there and say, oh, wow, look at that beauty, I'm picking that one. They literally get sick of government and pick the next person who will be him if he just stays quiet and stays, go around, do speeches. People like him. Universally, people like Robert Mitchell who talk to him. So like, he's good on doorsteps. He's good at coffee shops. He remembers your name. He asks about your parents, like all the stuff that the Lawrence Macaulay type politician that can pull that off. Just stay out of the negative stuff. It's not helping you.
But look, is Robert Mitchell the type of person who you can envision dealing in a substantive way with the issues that whoever the next premier is, Rob or Robert or McFarlane? Because we really are at a point in our provincial history where every government in Canada is in very serious financial trouble. We are more reliant on federal transfers than any other province. We have the least capacity of any province to sort of change and create new revenue streams. We don't have energy, which will benefit Newfoundland right now, for instance. Where's the leadership today? I guess that's what my question is. I know I live in an ivory tower. I could probably count on one hand. I've been doing this for 35 plus years, and I could count on one hand the politicians I would consider leaders for the time. What do we have to do? Go bankrupt before somebody shows up?
Well, I think that, again, like if you go back to like just the political lens on it, the wants of people are extremely high. So everybody wants their road paved. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, and everybody wants a hospital in their community, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have that, but like these things have become remarkably expensive to have now because to build a building costs so much, to pave a road costs so much. So all of the things that we've come to expect to have from our government are getting really hard to put on the table. And we're only 180,000 people, and we're expected to put hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure here in PEI every year, not just like once in a while, like every single year. I don't know how you change the expectations of the electorate, because politicians over the years have done a really good job of making the public think that they need them when they don't. And now they need them. And now government's in this weird position where it can't afford the people to think like that, but it's too late. We've had a century of this where politicians have worked really, really hard to make the public reliant on them to the point that now it's costing us and there's no path out.
It's hard to have any conversation about the state of PEI without talking about healthcare. Our healthcare system is a mess. 63 doctors wrote a letter to the provincial government, and Melody Fraser was fired basically the next day. But the flip side of it is the PC government is now into its fourth CEO of Health PEI since 2021. We're going to have a fourth or fifth, unless the interim becomes the permanent. So stability seems to be just a pipe dream because there's so much politics. And Health PEI, politicians love to say it's independent. It may be independent on paper, but it's not independent in reality. And politicians will say, well, we're the ones who get barked at in Superstore. And that's true. But there's not many politicians that I'm aware of who know how to run a health system.
No, but I mean, there's probably not that many politicians that know how to run any of the departments. It's not, you don't come in with any level of expertise. You don't get voted because you're the greatest accountant in Charlottetown. You get voted because people like you and maybe you coach their kid in hockey or softball or something. Like, it's not like the whole idea of representation is you're represented by people who are like you. So that's what people are choosing. So yeah, then it's a really tough task of having to head up a system like health, which is probably the toughest file of all. I will say I hope Lorraine stays. Like, she's an absolute all-star, came out of health proper, the department, so has a good ties understanding of what government's trying to accomplish on their side, because effectively it would have been her department that would have been pushing the initiatives to try to straighten it out. She's smart, she's balanced, she doesn't take any guff from anybody. She'll be able to stand up for herself inside the system and outside the system and to government. So I think hopefully she gets some room to get her feet under, and hopefully she stays and brings stability, because I think she's capable of bringing stability.
But look, if the system is a sham, why do we keep the system? Why do we have a Health PEI board?
I don't know.
Which
I don't think we should
do nothing.
I don't think we should have LPI. I think it all should be collapsed and sought back into government. And I said that to Dennis King in 2019. Let's get rid of it. Bring it back into government. If we're going to control it, let's control it. We shouldn't be scared. Why are we so scared to have the executive arm of government to control something? Like,
why are politicians scared to let people with expertise run healthcare?
I don't think that they're scared, but I mean, do you want the Kings County Memorial Hospital gone? Because that's what's going to happen. If the politicians disappeared out of it tomorrow, it'd be gone. We won't get a new one, and we won't have the old one.
But in a proper governance model, if you had proper governance, the government would set priorities, which would include, you have to maintain hospital coverage in boom, 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 right? And if they don't deliver it, the CEO of Health PEI will be held accountable. That's what proper governance is.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, I witnessed it with new Kings County Memorial Hospital. It's announced. It still hasn't had any work done on it. And I absolutely don't blame the politicians on this one, because everybody was on board. It was budgeted for. The money was set aside. It was announced. And we just didn't have any movement from the bureaucratic side of it because they don't want it.
Well, one of the big issues with Health PEI that you hear repeatedly is its ability to get a file at the door without changing it. I mean, I've heard so many stories about files or projects being signed off on, initiated, and then someone new, because there's huge turnover in Health PEI, comes in and they want to mark their spot. So you've got have you any examples that you can share?
Yeah. I'll give you an example. Remember back, I don't even know what year it was. It might have been in the in 2019 or 2020, it was early on in my phase in government. I pushed really hard to have the fertility services brought into government to begin with. Um, Went to dentists with it. Like, there was a lot of support to do it. By the time Health PEI put it out, they turned it into pay and we reimburse you. And it's like, well, all the people who can't afford to do this don't have $5,000 to expend to begin with. This is the whole point. Like, I was super frustrated about that, because I think it was great. It was the start of a service that was much needed on PEI. It was one that was widely ignored for a long period of time. So I'm happy that it came in, but the way that they executed it was bonkers, because it was clearly designed by people who had money in the bank. And they never once thought about all of the people on PEI, which there's lots of, who don't carry a bank balance, who could afford to jump in the car and go to Moncton and pay $5,000 to try and see if they can get pregnant. I think that's not. So it was one that when I look back on, I'm like, how could you take that and completely twist it into a ball of a mess? So I don't agree with it. I think that, and I don't know if it's that the system doesn't want to be told what to do, or they're smarter than the people who are making the suggestions that sit around the cabinet table in their minds, or what. But there's a lot of frustrations come along with it.
I suspect it's one of those issues that good ideas get lost in deep holes. And sometimes the bureaucracy is just a deep hole of butt covering, really.
Yeah, it's got its moments for sure. I've had some luck. I mean, I've had some work with some really, really good people who could move a file, because I think the things that I've done when I was in government that you might deem as a success were carried by hardworking people who put their heads down and did the work. So I think that, I was really lucky to get what I got out of it. And I think starting right back from one of my time in transportation, like that, the staff there are incredible as far as execution goes. Like, you go to them and they can execute bang, bang, bang. And obviously I think they made me look good really early on with the work that they did. I just asked them to do it. Certainly didn't do any work. So, Stephen, this is it's been an interesting first edition of Myers and MacNeill. See how generous I was. I put the Myers ahead of the MacNeill. I mean, media is always nice to politicians. So, what do you hope to achieve, if anything, on this little podcast? I think number one, I think people are going to view me as a Tory, which clearly I'm not a Tory, but I think that. How are you clearly not a Tory? I said I'm not a Tory. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm clearly a Tory, so yeah. I'm not even going to try to run from that. But I think that when you ask around anybody who's worked with me from other sides, I've been very fair to people, and I have friends on all sides. So I'm not here to bolster the Tories by any stretch of the imagination. I'm hoping that I can bring some reality to the discussion where, I have a little bit of lived experience in opposition and in government that can kind of hopefully bring some light to some of the conversations we might have. I think there can be some interesting depth. I mean, you can challenge why media does things, and I don't mind. I can't speak for all media. I can't even speak for mine some days, but it's an interesting dynamic we find ourselves in, because there's almost an intimacy between the political class and the media class and the people who look at both. It's a small place. And I think there's a lot of potential interest in something like this. And certainly if anyone has any topics, Stephen and I are easy to get a hold of. And in coming editions, I think we'll look at bringing in guests, and you can ask some questions and challenge some folks, and it can be an entertaining, not overly serious, but hopefully will bring some level of insight that is slightly new to the game. Yeah, I think it'd be fun to bring some people in. I could think of a few offhand that we might ask that would be entertaining to talk to. I want to have fun. I mean, I want to be serious and bring some serious perspective to it, but I'm not here to go home sad that I said something that I shouldn't have said either. I do want to smile, and this is all over. So I think that's one of my goals. There you go. Okay, you'll be able to find episode 1 of our podcast on YouTube. Stephen Myers has been a great first edition. Thanks very much. Thank you.